second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity is...
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of PVA Radio. I am one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me, as always, Joel McHale. Just kidding. Just kidding. It's Larry Hunt, who is also an LA Gladiators fan, much like Joel McHale. He's rocking his Gladiators jersey. Did you get to watch any Gladiators matches this weekend? They played two.
Just their first match. I didn't get to watch the one from yesterday yet, but I am going to go back and check it out.
Oh, dude, yeah, yesterday's fine Overwatch. Do you know the result at least? Or
I don't, but
okay.
I'm fine with it being spoiled. I just haven't looked.
No, you're good. It was just a fantastic match, so you definitely need to go back and watch it. One of the top 3 matches of the week, and I know that because I watched every single match this week. So, dude, we'll get into that.
How many hours is that?
We'll get into that here in just a second. But anyway, Cody is not with us again this week. At this point, we have just laid him to rest. All right. Good.
I'm trying to figure out what your image of him is this week.
That is his.
Oh, yeah, that's his javelin.
That's his javelin from Anthem. When he tweeted out, I tell you what the tweet says, but I can't minimize this picture or else his Twitter will pop up, but something about how it's the pinnacle of stuff. But he's actually conducting an interview for his job. Not a job interview. He is a journalist, a real life journalist, and he is doing an interview for a piece that he's working on. So he will not be joining us tonight. We miss him greatly. We are trying to get former host of the Player 3 podcast, Ben Hankins, on the show, but those plans fell through, and then it was a little too late to reach out to anybody else. So it's just me and you, Larry. I think we can hold it down again. We've done this countless times.
Many times.
So this is PVA Radio. We get together every week. Each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table. Then we have an in-depth discussion about it. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article or your CAFA, if you will. Larry, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor real quick.
Uh-oh.
If you will, never mind. We ran into a little issue last week. This is some housekeeping. I'm checking the levels like here visually as I go, but I was like really loud last week. You were really quiet, and I was seeing if maybe you had a means to check that while I did the rigmarole here at the beginning.
Well, I started sitting a little further back from my mic, so that's probably the big issue.
Okay.
Is helping?
Yeah. You sound a little, I was trying to say your mic sounds a little more hot, and I was going to say, but it was going to be, you sound a little hotter this week.
Well, thank you.
Oh, gosh. Some ASMR.
I was trying to do Seth's after party lounge voice from the Player 3 podcast days.
Hello and welcome to the Player 3 podcast after party lounge, where butt bucks are a currency.
So uncomfortable.
And then I think I have to like unwrap a thing of American cheese and chew it directly into the mic. That's how most of those ASMR videos go, right?
The only one I've ever seen is the Super Bowl ad, to be honest with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, never checked it out.
Rhett and Link have done a couple just like making fun of the others, and it's kind of gross to me. Like, I know that some people are like into it because it gives them those goosebumps, but for me it was just like, I'm not about this life. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. We should do one of me eating a banana. Have I ever subjected you to that?
No, is it different from you eating anything else?
Yeah, there's just something about a banana. I can't chew them right, and it gets all disgusting sounding.
Well, it's because the way you're supposed to eat a banana, Larry, is you put the banana in front of your teeth, and then you just suck it back through between your teeth. You don't actually chew it.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
so,
my bad.
So next time, and that won't make any disgusting noises. You can catch this nonsense every week at 9 p.m. on Mondays Eastern Time over on twitch.tv/PVA Radio. If you miss us live, check us out on any of your podcast services or over on youtube.com. Just search for PVA Radio. Larry, how's your week been, my friend? It's only Monday, but how's it been?
It's been pretty good. Had a good work week. I've started to eat healthy again. Earlier cooked some Brussels sprouts in coconut oil. It was delicious. And yeah, it's been a good week. How about you?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I work from home today. I'm working like a new schedule for my job, and I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. We shall see. Working from home Mondays and Fridays and having to go and do my hour and 15-minute commute 3 days in a row. We'll see. May need some adjusting. But all right, man. Let's jump right into it with what have you been playing? What have you been playing?
Played a little Overwatch. And again, had a match where somebody was throwing. It was so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this. You said we should just play quick play for a while, and I am there because no one's playing competitive in the competitive playlist. And aside from that, I've been playing the crap out of Apex Legends. I've been having a blast with that game still. It's not getting old for me. And it's the kind of game where I'm such a social gamer. I just play what my friends are playing. But this is a game I'll hop on and play by myself with whatever randoms are available.
Well, it makes it easy to do that with the ping system, at
Yeah,
least.
that's very true.
Yeah, Larry, I'm going to tell you something that I wish somebody would have told me when I was down the rabbit hole with Overwatch. You may have a problem.
Oh, I know.
Because we were playing Overwatch. Was that Saturday?
I think that was last night. No, you're right. It was Saturday.
Saturday. And you were like, I got mad because we had played a couple games with throwers, and I was like, all right, man, well, I'm getting off. And you're like, hey, man, well, do you just want to hop over to Apex Legends? And I was like, dude, it's midnight. And like, you have church in the morning because Larry works in ministry, right? So he has to be up early on Sundays. I was like, I don't even have the commitment in the morning, but I'm going to bed.
You talked me out of it. I opted not to play that night, but had you not said anything, I would have hated myself the next day.
Well, I'm glad you went to bed. I'm glad you don't hate yourself. And maybe you can get a couple matches in tonight after the show.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to.
Also, I meant to mention this on the top. We have started a Discord as well that will be in the link, the description of the podcast on YouTube and podcast services. So if you're listening to the show, want to interact with the community, you can go to the link in the description, join our Discord server, hang out with us over there. I had to drop the band hammer already, Larry.
Nice.
Well, it was just like a spam account joined in the middle of the night and dropped links and everything, so I dropped the band hammer. But Milky missed his opportunity to set the inaugural one. Larry will not be joining us in the Discord server for now, as he is on a fast from social media, and Discord falls into the realm of social media. At least the Discord server portion of it. He still uses it to chat with me.
Yep.
So, will you be joining the server after the fast is over, or are you taking an assessment of the landscape after the 30 days?
I don't know. I'm taking an assessment of the landscape is what's happening. So we'll see. I'm going to decide what things actually add value and what things do not and work them in accordingly. I'll probably wind up giving it a shot because I've never even tried a Discord server. But I anticipate majorly cutting back on the time that I spend on social media across the board. So I don't know.
Especially Facebook, the worst of all social media. How much?
I've already decided I'm not going back to that mess.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much has your life improved since dropping Facebook?
It's pretty great. I don't know, man. I like keeping up with people on Facebook, with family, with old friends. And I like the rare situation where like you have good conversation about something. But those two things are like 1% of my timeline, and the rest is stupid stuff that doesn't matter and blatant falsehood about our current political landscape.
Yeah, that sounds about right. All right. Well, I'm glad you're still here doing the podcast with me. And Larry and I maintain an actual friendship where we call each other and see each other in person. You guys should try it sometime.
I highly encourage it. And you get more time for that if you spend less time on the internet, it turns out.
Shocking. And you're discovering the joy of RSS feeds as well.
I am. And it's taken me a while to like find one I like and get it pared down to things that are actually helpful and not just flooding it as badly as having another social media account. But now I've gotten a good place, and it's a good way to keep on top of what you want to keep on top of without having to sort through tons of stuff that you don't care about.
I think one of the cool things about getting away from social media, we're down the rabbit hole. This is what happens when you and I are on this podcast by ourselves. One of the great things about getting away from like Reddit, especially, is you have not you as in you, but you as in the collective. People have a tendency to let the comment section in those places tell them what to think about something. And I actually took a hiatus from Reddit a couple of years ago because I found myself like in this hive mindset, just thinking only the things that Reddit commenters say. And I've since, folded myself back into the mix, knowing to guard against that. But the cool thing about an RSS feed, I use it mostly for work, like reading marketing stuff. But I feel like we're challenged less and less as a society to read things and figure out what it means for ourselves. And an RSS feed just presents you with what's there. Like, you're not engaging in a discussion about it.
Yeah, that, and I think also just we're bombarded by so many links to so many things as we're scrolling through our feeds that we feel too much pressure to take the time to read any one of them deeply.
Yeah.
I think that contributes as well. So yeah, it's been really beneficial in that way, just forcing me to think what I think about it based off of information I read and not what someone else thinks about it.
Yeah. All right, what have I been playing? I played a little bit of Apex Legends with you, Larry, this week, a little bit of Overwatch. We've talked about that. Also got a chance to play Tetris 99, the new Tetris Battle Royale game. It's free on Nintendo Switch.
This.
It's free on Nintendo Switch, dude. Do you like Tetris?
No, I hate it.
Oh, okay.
I'll play that. I'll give it a shot.
it's pretty fun. So it's you versus 99 people, right? And in the middle is the Tetris board, but on the outside are the other 99 players, and you can aim over them and send like stacks of blocks their way that they have to try to play around. And so the goal is to be the last person standing in it. So really super simple concept on the surface, but it's a lot of multitasking and like trying to keep up with who you want to strategically attack and making sure that your board stays clear. So it's an interesting take on the Battle Royale. It feels really derivative of Apex Legends.
Does it have the same call out system?
Yeah. You're like square block at 293. But it's pretty fun. I'm kind of a Tetris purist. Like, I don't like the different takes on Tetris, and Tetris 99 isn't much of an exception for that. Like, it's fun for what it is, but I'd much rather just play regular Tetris.
Yeah.
Because I consider and it's also one of those things, like, I consider myself pretty good at Tetris, and then you get on there and you just realize you're not good at all. Like, when we're playing each other in chess and we're like, man, we're both pretty good at this game. I'd know if we played literally anyone else with chess experience, we would probably get demolished.
Yeah.
And then I actually dove into League of Legends in a way where I was able to learn some things. So my brother-in-law, Ben, he is a listener of this show, listened to the Player 3 podcast as well. Like, him and my sister almost every week would listen to the show. So he hit me up and was like, hey, I was wondering how long it would take you to actually download League of Legends after you've been talking about watching Professional League. And so apparently my brother-in-law has been playing for almost the entire duration of League of Legends' existence and was really big into it in college. And so we got on Friday. I had Friday off, and we just played League of Legends for like 4 hours together while he was walking me through, like, here's how the shop works, and Here's kind of the strategy of the matches. And I know a drop of an ocean now, but it's one drop more than I knew before. And Ben just knows like a stupid level, like a stupid amount about that game. And he did just a great job kind of walking me through. So I got on, I think it was Saturday morning before Lauren got up. I got on to play a match, and the character that I was learning on got selected by somebody else on my team, so I had to play a character I was super unfamiliar with. Got flamed. A guy was telling the entire chat to report me, and I was like, dude, I'm a level 7. Like, let me know what I need to be doing better. And he's like, report this guy, report Hoagie. And I was like, oh my gosh. So
how dare he start this game?
So I belong. I feel like I belong in the League of Legends world now. I've been flamed for being bad, and League of Legends has a grand reputation for toxicity. And
Great.
so
Have fun with it.
yeah, I will. Luckily, most people aren't in voice chat, so they're just typing over on the left-hand corner, and I can just squelch it so I don't see it. But yeah, that's what I've been playing. All right, Larry.
What?
You have a couple follow-ups in here. You have like 3 follow-ups in here.
I do. Is that okay? I'm just going to go
Yeah,
lightning
dude.
fast.
Yeah, go for it.
So first off, just want to do some follow-up on Apex Legends. Last week we touched on the fact that Titanfall 2 had seen a boost in play from Apex. People getting curious, checking it out, people getting reminiscent, going back and playing it again. And it was also on sale for $4.50. So Titanfall 2 spent some time in the top paid game slot this week on Xbox.
Wild, man.
So that was pretty neat. And I looked, I don't know if you've seen, I couldn't find an updated number after they passed the 25 million players mark on Apex Legends. And they also hit 2 million players concurrently. But the game's continuing to grow. And I didn't realize this, it's not available in China yet. And so EA is in talks with Tencent to bring Apex Legends to the Chinese market. And if that happens, it's going to blow up even more.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the third follow-up is we got our first taste of monetization in this game, and it left some players concerned, including myself. There were some special Valentine's Day weapon skins, and when you convert their in-game currency to real-life currency, those skins cost about $11, and you can only buy in-game currency in $10 increments, so you had to spend $20 if you wanted a weapon skin, $40 if you wanted 2 weapon skins, and most people were not thrilled with that, and I hope that that's not an omen of things to come, but we'll see. So that's Apex. Okay.
No, I was gonna hop in there for a second. Like, it sucks that that's how it is, and I don't know. You said after you did a little digging and a little math, that's how you found out. Well, you're not on Reddit, so I can't ask if like this was. I didn't see anything. I've got an account that just follows gaming news over on Reddit, and I didn't see anybody raising a huge stink about this. And what tends to happen with these kind of games is they get so cultish of a following that a lot of times people don't want to say anything negative about them. And they like to justify it like, oh, this is just a cosmetic only item. But relative to how Titanfall 2 approached their microtransactions, albeit that was a full game release, a full price game release. I do think that like there is a little bit of a reason to be concerned. Now, I'm not saying like, go grab the pitchforks, but it's something to be vocal about. That like, hey, if you're gonna make these things odd number amounts, at least allow me to just pay for that odd number amount.
Yeah. As it stands, that's the kind of thing that just feels predatory. Do you want this weapon skin? Well, you're gonna have to pay $9 extra, and maybe you'll get to use that other currency later on.
Yeah,
probably not. So yeah, other follow-up, we got Fallout 76. Haven't talked about it in a while, and we had some positive news this week. One of the big problems that's been going on in the game is that players found a way to duplicate items, which has led to a big mess in the in-game economy, and a big mess of players being real jerks and duplicating high-level in-game type stuff and just dominating the PvP experience. Well, this week they dropped a patch that dealt with the duplicated items. So every duplicated item in the game has been deleted. So if you spent time doing all that, great news, it's all gone, and you suck. And those players were further punished by if players in possession of multiple duplicated items also had a large amount of bottle caps, the currency in the world of Fallout 76. Bethesda just went ahead and took that away too. So that was pretty great. And the great thing is that as of this morning, at least, there were no negative side effects of this patch, which has kind of been a problem with this game. Every time they fix something, something else would break. So we had a good patch. They've given us a little bit of a peek at what the next patch is going to entail, which includes several things people have been asking for. And we should be hearing about their 2019 roadmap soon. So hopefully we're hitting a turning around point for this game, but we'll see. And then the last update isn't a major thing. It's just the greatest Star Wars game ever created is free with Games for Gold this week, and you need to go download it. Jedi Knight Jedi Academy. It's from the original Xbox. I've been singing its praises for years on our podcasts. And if you've never checked it out, go check it out. It was a really great RPG that was ahead of its time for console RPGs anyway, I think. And one of the most fun Star Wars games of all time. You can get the Force choke ability and just like chuck people like ragdolls wherever you want to chuck them once you get that thing leveled up all the way. It's a blast.
All right, ringing endorsement from Larry. You can choke people out and toss them across the room.
Yep.
All right.
That's what I live for.
All right. Larry,
This is a great segue.
Larry, let's get into it. Well, now my topics first. So.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been a great segue, though. All right. I'm a little sad that Cody can't join us today because I know that I think he'd have a lot to contribute to these topics, and he actually texted me, and the topic I'm going to be discussing is one of the topics that is the topic he was likely to select if he were to be on the show this week, and that is all this mess with the Activision layoffs. Now, I do want to just mention, like, there were 2 weeks leading up to this that we probably could have talked about this on the show, but for me, I wanted to give it enough runway to kind of play out to see see what happened. Now, it turned out that pretty much what was speculated was going to happen in those 2 weeks leading up to this is exactly what happened. But I at least wanted to give that some time to pan out before we had our discussion about it. So if you are out of the loop on what's happened here, there's a great article over on Polygon by Michael Futter called "What the Hell Happened at Activision Blizzard?" And really, like, that's the question, right? Well, what the hell happened here? So Activision Blizzard, they're the company that makes Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Candy Crush. They are the parent company of Major League Gaming, the MLG network, those things. Last week they announced they had two major announcements that kind of seemed to be speaking out of both sides of the mouth. The first was that they had, quote, achieved record results in 2018. They made $7.5 billion in sales and $1.8 billion in profit last year. However, despite the record results, 800 employees were let go. They were laid off. They are now out of work. And I'm actually just going to read this paragraph from this Polygon article because I think it's poignant. It says, quote, record results, 800 employees out of work. Those facts are more than just a recipe for cognitive dissonance. They create cerebral friction that could spark a forest fire. And it may have done just that, as the layoffs have fueled the conversation around game unionization and executive pay, end quote. Actually, he continues, as the call went on, it seemed that executives were largely remorseless, with the exception of Blizzard president Jay Allen Brack, who expressed regret at the layoffs, end quote. So, Activision Blizzard, this is a company everybody knows, right? Like, if you are even somewhat connected to the gaming world, you have not only heard of these publishers, but this publisher, but you have played a game that was this company touched. I don't know, man. I just want to get your thoughts. here at the top, Larry, just kind of reading this news, like, how did you feel as it started to come out, and what are your reactions?
Uh, just mainly anger. Uh, when you've got a company bringing in that much money, it does not make sense to be laying off that many people, and the only sense that can be made of it is if you are at the top of that food chain and you realize you could, in a very calloused way, trim off a little bit of of your head count, as they refer to the people, and increase your profits even more, then why not do it? But as we've established, it's just such a callous way of thinking about it, and it just really gets to the heart of what's going on in the leadership of Activision. They're not obviously concerned about the people; they're concerned about money beyond record-setting numbers. I think.
Yeah. And I think one of the more damning parts of the story, again, I'm just going to read directly from the Polygon article here. It says, Bobby Kotick, who is the CEO of Activision, has become the villain in this story. Kotick drew a $1.75 million salary plus another $26 million or so in stock and other equity awards in 2017. Dennis Durkin, who recently returned to the CFO role and was also put in charge of, quote, emerging business, end quote, figuring out where the company will make its money in the coming years, was given a $3.75 million cash bonus and another $11.3 million in as yet unearned performance-based equity. The disparity between bottom line executive compensation and what the 800 people laid off were making is staggering. End quote. That's all from the article here. This is not just an issue in gaming. I think is connected into the sphere as we try to be. These stories tend to rear their heads a lot more often than they do in other industries for us. But this is a systemic issue within the way that capitalism works in America, right? Like there's this complete imbalance of power between those who are in charge and those who are and the employees that actually are the cogs in the wheel, that cogs in the machine that make it move forward, right? That this whole idea of like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, work as hard as you can, and you'll eventually find yourself in a place where you're making good money and you have great stability. Like, largely in this corporate world is bullshit, right? These are 800 talented people who put blood, sweat, and tears into franchises, into their passions. For a lot of people following this, they were going on Twitter and tweeting that this was their dream job. And while some fat cat at the top of Activision was cut a giant bonus check, they were given a pink slip. And it's just completely and utterly disgusting. And then I don't have the quote pulled up. I tweeted out a picture of this, a screenshot of, I believe it was the Kotaku article, where they talked about how they wanted to continue the success through their owned franchises. So, continue the success with Overwatch, with Call of Duty, with all of these franchises that they've built. But it just feels a little disgusting because it's like, hey, we want to continue to grow financially on the success of these games that 800 people that we just laid off sacrificed immensely to create. So it's a systemic issue that needs to be addressed. It needs to be changed. And Larry, I guess the question is, number one, what needs to be changed? And number two, what do you see actually changing following these events?
First off, I just want to throw out there, as I was reading through these numbers earlier, I was just crunching. For less than 2% of the salary that you mentioned, I could clear all of my debts and have plenty left over. It was just ridiculous. The amount of money they're pulling in and the desire to pull in more. And I'm going to kind of come at this from a weird angle. And I rarely, bring morality into the things that we talk about here. But I do think that as a culture, we need to kind of look at what we value. And so much of our culture right now is centered on amass as much wealth and material things as you can. And that's where your status is going to come from. For many of us, like that's where our moral compass is primarily pointed. Get stuff. And so those of us who don't have, we can look at this guy and think, man, I'd do so much better if I were in his shoes. But if I'm in my current state, the sort of person who thinks that I'm going to find happiness in getting more and more and more, then I probably wouldn't fare much better if I were in his shoes.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite spiritual philosophical writers, Dallas Willard, wrote that a greedy, avaricious poor man is no, or wait, I've butchered that. How embarrassing. Maybe he's not my favorite writer. But more or less, an avaricious poor man is no better than an avaricious rich man. And he actually wrote that in railing against the church's idolization of poverty, as though that's the superior moral stance. And the point that he was making was having and having not is not the issue. The issue is do I have contentment? And so I think a big part of the problem is that as a society, we need to develop contentment and stop idolizing the amassment of wealth the way that we do. And until we do that, I really don't think that any political system, any regulations we put in place are going to completely change it. But I'll move on from that soapbox. And aside from that, I actually feel pretty powerless in addressing this. Because largely, anytime I think a company's done awful, I'm like, well, vote with your wallet. Don't buy their games anymore. But with these particular guys, that's not going to hurt them, right? They're fine. They're set. They made over $1 million this year. It's just gonna, if I attack Activision that way, more people lose their jobs. Like that's what happens there. Mm-hmm. And I do wish Cody was here. I think he'd have a lot to contribute here. He's a lot more knowledgeable about the unionization side of things than I am. I've seen situations where that's been good and situations where that's been bad, but my weak point in understanding many things is in economics. And so my typical vote with your wallet doesn't help. And so all I can really offer is we are a society that told these guys all their lives that this is what is good, is being that dude that has it all and has more. And you kind of shoot yourself in the foot when they get to where we all want to be, and then also try to say you shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense. That was all very ranty.
No, I think it does. One of the things the Polygon article points out that I think is a really great point is how over the past few years, Activision has done a lot of paring down the franchises that they're supporting and that they're actually developing for, and how they've moved a lot of teams that were working on individual projects over to support roles on some of the bigger projects. So we're talking, Destiny 2, Call of Duty, the big pillar franchises for the studio, for the publisher. And so what they've created is this lack of diversification among their portfolio, to where if one pillar falls or if one pillar underperforms, then it puts the entire company at risk of what happened, right? And because while they did amass this immense amount of profit, they didn't hit their targets, right? Like, which is why the layoffs happened. I mean, I'm not trying to justify the layoffs. I think they're disgusting. But it was. Go ahead.
Can I interject a thing there? I also felt like their projections that they underperformed were, like, the underperformance even was very successful by other people's standards. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like that even seemed unfair to me. Like, well, you guys didn't hit this less than realistic goal we set.
Right. Well, and again, I'm not attempting to justify any of the
Oh
actions
no,
here.
I didn't mean that.
No. But I am going to say something like, for these giant companies like this, they're hiring for scale. They're hiring for where they believe they are going, right? Because what you don't want to do is get down the hill and realize that the boulder's already on top of you. So if you feel like, oh man, we have this great roadmap for Destiny 2, it's going to explode, it's going to, and it's going to be a massive success, you're going to hire the people to support the projection of the massive success. And when you start to see that massive success isn't actually going to come, you have to start to pare it down. Again, that's not justification at all for what's happened here. It's just the reality of the situation, and it's why it happened. It wasn't like we set our targets and now we're punishing everybody by cutting. It's just the way that business is done, and that's the systemic issue within it all, is that this lack of diversification among the portfolio at Activision is a leadership problem, right? This artist over here working on concept art for Overwatch isn't the one who's making decisions like, oh man, yeah, we should take these 4 studios that were all working on individual products and move them over to support a title that if it fails, things go under, right? And what was the big story for Activision this year? It was their divorce with Bungie for Destiny 2. And that has some real life consequences and fallout to it that still would have been impacting the bottom line of the company at large, but would have had less of an impact on the bottom line for the company at large if they had put their eggs in multiple baskets, right? Like, it's not a difficult economic principle to say, maybe it's a better idea for us to have like safe bets rather than putting our chips all in on these 3 or 4 different products. And that's the imbalance. That's the systemic problem, is that yes, they made this record-breaking growth, but the reason that they didn't hit their targets was because of the leadership that just got the fat check bonus. And that's bullshit.
Yeah.
The 800 people that got laid off had nothing to do with the underperformance, or had much less to do with the underperformance of these franchises than the leaderships who got cut the big checks and got applauded by all of the stockholders that they were on that phone call with.
And looking at some of those guys taking bonuses, like, whoa, we're underperforming. What's this bonus all about?
Yeah.
Did you read the part of the? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you read and what you didn't just now, and what I read earlier. Did you read the part where they briefly referenced Nintendo's president?
No,
we don't
I did
really
not.
need to read it, but like, what a great example of good leadership, right? Like, he took a pay cut to avoid layoffs. And his pay cut still leaves him at a very, very comfortable place, well above what most of us will ever touch, right? And these guys are, he's down to a fraction of what most of these guys are taking in. So, like, that's where I keep coming back to. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, diversification might make the difference there. I kind of think that part of the issue is this games as services landscape we find ourselves in, because even with the diversification, you've got to invest so much in those games as services, and then it's still a big risk if they don't take off, right? But I think you're right that it could have made a difference. But at the end of the day, this still didn't need to happen. I'm essentially saying the same thing again, but I'm going to say it more forcefully. The guys heading this company are morally bad. You severed so many people's livelihood so that you could have a fatter paycheck, and that is morally wrong. And I wish we had more people like Nintendo's president.
Yeah. And it's just a complete slap in the face to the people who, and just the way that this shit went down, right? Like, the rumors swirling for weeks ahead of time that this was going to happen, to the point where people were like, there were reports of people standing in the parking lot crying with one another because they weren't sure if they were going to have a job at the end of the day. And can you imagine working with people for years, and then you come in and yeah, you may still have a job, but these 3 people that you went and you got lunch with once a week, they don't work here anymore. Like, even for the people outside of the 800 that got laid off, like, it's just a complete and utter morale, like, kick to the morale. And it's, and at what cost, right? Like it's not to say that. Well, I don't know. I haven't looked at the math. I don't know if them not taking these bonuses or whatever, taking a pay cut would have saved all the jobs. But
Yeah.
to know that it's like, hey, our CEO took a 50% pay cut until things get back on track so that we could save X amount of jobs, like that goes a long way, right? I think we understand in the world of business that there are times where things are going to have to get leaned out, and there are times where there's going to be hiring booms. Like that's just the nature of that's the nature of capitalism, right? But for something to be so dichotomous like this situation is a clear cut example of exactly how things need to change, right? And there does need to be unionization within the industry. There does need to be a collective force outside of these companies that can hold companies accountable, who can go to bat for the employees. Because, I mean, look, this isn't the first story on PVA Radio that we've covered where employees have been just, cut away at the drop of a hat with no further warning than, a day or two of rumors ahead of it. There is little to no safety within game development. And the amount of turnover for another thing we didn't mention that's in this article, seriously, I encourage anybody who's listening to go read this Polygon article, is that there are contractors who aren't getting anything. And a lot of the gaming industry is contractors, right? You're not full-time employees. You come in, you work at a company for a season on a contract, and then, you're cut loose, and those people have nothing to fall back on. And so again, I do think Cody would have a lot more to contribute here. And, maybe we can broach the subject with him when he's back next week, but the imbalance of power is that there is no central voice for employees to be able to speak up in situations like this. There's no presence in the boardroom speaking for these employees, because to the stockholders, to the people who were on this earnings call, it's just a head count. Our head count's going to be 800 less this time tomorrow, and that's all they care about. Those are salary figures. And as shitty as it sounds, I imagine that some of this bonus comes as a result of cutting costs that these executives, you saved the money, you saved the company this much money through these cuts. Like, here's a bonus. It's just a complete and total imbalance of power. And look, I've ran a business much smaller than Activision. I was only getting $1.5 million salary. No. I ran a business, and we made 8 hires through the 2 years that we operated. We just recently announced we were closing. The proudest thing the thing I'm most proud of in my operating of that business has been hiring employees, giving them a paycheck. And these were college kids, right? But we had, we set out our values early on, that it was like, we are not going to just pay minimum wage to these workers. We're going to pay them well. We're going to value them. We're going to train them and teach them life skills that hopefully they can carry on from here and move on. And when times got tough, we didn't cut employees. We didn't cut pay. I went over a year now without making a single dime from my company. Instead, there were times where I would pay into the company when things got a little lean and we weren't going to be able to make payroll. It never once crossed our minds to say, we're going to cut our general manager's salary, because we knew that without those people, our company wouldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the realization here, like, there's a disconnect, right? These executives aren't understanding that these are 800 people who got you to the place that you're able to hop on that call and brag about your record earnings. Like, what did Bobby Kotick do to? I'm sure he did something. Like, there's a reason somebody is in that seat, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But without the army of people underneath him, to actually execute on the projects and deliver on the vision of these creators, like, you don't get to sit on that call. And where the games industry is one of those places, and now I'm on my soapbox, but where the games industry is one of those places where it's people's dream job, right? Like, oh, we can cut 800 people, and then if we need 200 more next week, they're going to be lined up. You know that there's a revolving door. There's a line of people. When I worked at GameStop, and then again, smaller example, because this was just at the local level, there was this mindset among leadership that was just like, yeah, well, we'd rather let somebody go and hire somebody new than give somebody a raise, because we know that if we put out a job that, hey, GameStop's hiring, we're going to have 40 morons who fill out an application thinking this is the best job in the world, and they'll take whatever we give them to come work here. Mm-hmm. I shocked people when I interviewed for my job, and I was like, yeah, I think I should make $15 an hour. And they were like, why? I was like, because I think I'm worth $15 an hour. They're like, would you take $7.25? No, I wouldn't. But I know that there were a lot of people lined up that would.
Yeah.
It's just an undervaluing of the people who put you in the position to be successful, is all that I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I didn't answer your second question. What will change? And I don't think anything in the short term. These executives at Activision got exactly what they wanted. This public backlash, the complaining, it's not going to hurt them. Not in the short term. But I wonder if the morale hit is going to affect things. Low morale, that's going to affect your product. And if I were an employee at Activision, like, I would not be confident in that job, right? If I had the opportunity to move to another company at this point, I'd be thinking about it. But I realize that a lot of people don't have that opportunity, so I'm not optimistic.
I'm a little more optimistic in that the disparity between the success and the layoffs is so just stark, right? It's dichotomous. Like, for somebody to look at 800 people and tell them you don't have a job tomorrow, and then turn around and hop on a phone call and say, we had record sales last year. I think there are 800 people within the industry who are pissed off about this. I think that there are more than 800 people in the industry that are pissed off about it. There are the people who are still at Activision who survived it that are pissed off. There are people at Ubisoft and, name any other studio that are looking at this and they're pissed off about it, because they understand, like, if this can happen to them, it can happen to anybody. If this can happen to these people in a record-setting year, it can happen to us. And so I'm curious to see what movements are starting already, because this does feel like a catalyst moment in the conversation that can hopefully start to push things forward. One of the biggest publishers in the world set a record and then made like record-setting cuts as well is a great starting point for a conversation that can actually move the needle. So
hope so.
All right. Well, we'll set aside some time next week and let Cody put his 2 cents in here as well. But for now, let's move on, Larry. What is your topic?
My topic is... Sorry, I wasn't ready. And now I am. There was a new Oxford study this week about whether video games contribute to violent tendencies. And it turns out that, much like the the numerous studies that have been conducted over the last few decades, they found no link between violent behavior and playing violent video games. And their study was a little different than studies that had been done before. And if I was reading correctly, this was the first study that had done this, but they declared ahead of time exactly how they were measuring their results, which protects against biases and a tendency to select the most exciting information once your study's done. But even with that, they found the same results. They encouraged further study. But yeah, I just wanted to have a little conversation about that, because every time something terrible happens, something terribly violent, this is the thing that's scapegoated. Violent video games, that's the thing that's to blame. Our president has said that Pennsylvania is considering levying a tax against violent video games to discourage the purchase of them. So I assume you saw this study this week. What were your initial thoughts on it?
I mean, duh.
Right?
Like, I've never understood this conversation, right? That if it's like, hey, guns don't kill people, bad people kill people, how you go 1 degree even further and say, like, violent video games are the actual culprit here. It's just so much doublespeak that it's just hard for me to wrap my head around it. I do appreciate the transparency that this study was conducted with, because I do feel like a lot of times with these kinds of things, where it's any hot button topic, whether it be violence in video games, vaccines, like global warming, whatever it may be, you kind of know going in what the people are looking for.
Yeah.
And so the difference with this the difference with this hot button topic and vaccines and global warming is that there are plenty of independent studies that were conducted in this manner for those topics for us to be able to point at. And so it's nice now to have one in this realm that we can point to. And the whole, like, hey, we encourage other people to conduct this study and see the results that come out as well. I'm looking for their methodology here. Do you recall exactly how they went about conducting this?
I do not, but I can pull it up while.
Well, I have it.
Television.
Yeah, I have it pulled up here as well. But yeah, and look, we've talked about this at length on previous podcasts. I don't think we've ever had the discussion out on PVA radio, but this has been a question since the dawn of Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty, and it's been the boogeyman that parents like to scapegoat when things happen. And look, do I think that we should put restrictions on at what age kids should be exposed to this sort of material? Absolutely. Do I think that we should probably have better standards by which we hold parents to, against which we hold parents to for this sort of thing? Like, you can't walk into a convenience store and buy a pack of cigarettes and give it to your son, right? Like, and I do think that there needs to be some change that happens on that front, to where, like, hey, I think I've told this story on podcasts before. When I worked at GameStop, obviously Grand Theft Auto brought up this conversation, but Saints Row was another one where parents would come to the table, come to the counter with the game, buying it for their preteen kid, and I'm like, all right, you realize this game is rated M? And they're like, yeah, I know. He plays it on mute. that was my favorite argument. I'm like, yeah. He can also, have sex with prostitutes and murder them. And my favorite was when I told parents, like, hey, one of the most powerful weapons in Saints Row is a giant purple dildo that you can kill people with. That was normally the one that was like, oh no, you are not playing this game. And they'd go put them up. But the thing is like, I can walk through all of that, right? and a parent can be like, that's okay, I'm still going to buy it for them. And to me, like that is something that needs change, because you can't stroll into a convenience store and be like, I'd like a pack of Marlboro Reds for my 12-year-old son here. And the person at the register is like, well, you do understand that smoking is a highly addictive habit, right? Yeah, I know. And you do know that it's linked to all kinds of cancer, including deadly lung cancer. Yeah.
He's mature for his age.
He only smokes the shorts. And they can just sign off on it and buy their kids these things, right? Like,
Yeah.
So I do think that there are changes that need to be made. I don't think it needs to be a tax. I don't think it needs to be anything like that. But I do feel like there should be some more restrictions on, but it's not because I think they create people who are like, I'm going to go buy a gun and recreate Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah. I pulled up the abstract from the study. It took me a little longer than I thought. But they had 1,004 British adolescents aged 14 and 15 years old, and an equal number of their carers who were interviewed. Young people provided reports of their recent gaming experiences. Further, the violent contents of these games were coded using the official EU and US ratings, and carers provided evaluations of their adolescents' aggressive behaviors in the past month. Following a pre-registered analysis plan, multiple regression analyses tested the hypothesis that recent violent gameplay is linearly and positively related to carer assessments of aggressive behavior. The results did not support this prediction, nor did they support the idea that the relationship between these factors follows a nonlinear parabolic function. There was no evidence for a critical tipping point relating violent game engagement to aggressive behavior. And there's a lot more to it, but I think that's a good snapshot.
Yeah, that sums it up.
And I really liked that the way they tested the aggressive behavior was to have the carer assess that.
Yeah.
Mom and dad are going to know best. But yeah, and what's interesting there, unless I'm misunderstanding, it seems that they expected to find a correlation and did not. So at best they were, I don't think they were like necessarily trying to, this is what we want to prove, but that was what they hypothesized there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the big boogeyman of video game kid violence. So it's established that this is fact. Well, not fact, I shouldn't say that, but it's pretty well established that there's not a correlation between these two things. And study after study proves this. What's it going to take for the general consensus to follow this? Will it ever? Or is there always going to be somebody's mom standing up saying, actually, it made my little Johnny punch his sister in the mouth?
Look, man, it's the cat's out of the bag, right? Like it's a great scapegoat. It's the thing that people are going to be able to point to when they don't want to blame what's actually wrong, which is likely your parenting. And so I don't think we're ever going to come to a day where it's just like the general consensus. I mean, we still have groups of people who rail against, metal, heavy metal. They rail against violent movies. They rail against rap music. Like they rail against all these things. And so it's never going to be something that dies. It's just baked into who we are. We like to blame things that seem to be out of our control.
Yeah. I told you this before the show, but I really didn't feel like I had a lot of great questions related to this because for me, for some of our listeners, maybe this is the first time they're hearing discussion about this study outside of the scapegoating of games, or the discussion about this type of study, rather. But for me and you, like, I was like, I don't even know if I want to put this in the show notes. It's kind of a big deal, but it's also just beating a dead horse. Excuse my violent analogy. It's frustrating. And I don't really have a whole lot more to say about it. I just felt like it was an important thing to bring up and make sure that the people listening are aware that, hey, this keeps getting demonstrated in all these studies, and here we have an even more solid study. And once again, there's not a correlation between violent behavior and playing violent games.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got that on the books now. I don't like it. It's like you said. if you're hoping to listen to something where we're going to be like, well, there might be, you've come to the wrong podcast. So, all right, man. Well, that sounds like it's going to be a short show for us today.
Yeah. Well, it'll just offset the show that was last week.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, man. Well, let's get out of here. No, there's no game this week. Again, I have too devastating a lead against everybody to give myself even better chances to win by only allowing one person to guess. So, no two truths and a gaming lie this week. We'll bring that back next week. But if you guys want, join our Discord. The link will be in the show notes. And Larry, who are you? Where can people find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LarHunts, LARHUNTS Zombies. A couple in my church was visiting me Saturday at my home, and the wife was like, so what's the deal with your Instagram handle? And the older I get, the more weird that conversation becomes. But Larry Hunt Zombies, that's where you can find me. And this week, my Twitter will be a performance piece dealing with the benefits of disconnecting.
All right. I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay, I'm not tweeting.
Speaking of, actually, I do want to. How much of the Overwatch League did you watch this weekend? You watched the Gladiators match. Is that it?
No, I watched. I'm so bad at remembering things, but I watched Seoul versus
Dallas.
Yeah, that sounds right. I caught the end of their game. I watched the full game of the Hangzhou Spark and the
LA Valiant.
Yes, and I really enjoyed that match.
That was the match of the week, no doubt.
Yeah.
If you're going to catch a match, that was the match to catch.
That's the only one I got to watch in its entirety. I caught a glimpse of one of the Justices games, but I didn't watch very much of it.
Well, they only played the NYXL this week, and
okay. Yeah, I watched the end of that match.
Yeah, it was. I believe it was the fastest match in Overwatch League history. It was over in 55 minutes. NYXL 2-0'd them on Busan. They full held them on Kings Row. They got full held on Horizon Lunar Colony, and then they stopped them halfway through Point B on Rialto. So, very fast match.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I watched all of the matches.
How many hours is that?
Which is over 36 hours of Overwatch League gaming. So look, Lauren was supposed to be gone this weekend. She had planned a trip to go see her family, but a couple of her family members were sick, so she didn't want to risk going down there and getting sick herself. But I told her, I was like, look, I have already mentally set aside this weekend to just veg out on the couch and watch Overwatch League. And I don't know if she didn't believe me or if she didn't realize the magnitude. Because she was like, that's okay. I'll tell you what, man. I watched every single match last year as well. There's never been more diverse gameplay than there has been this year. In a meta where everybody was expecting to see goats every single match, and look, I don't care to nerd out on this. We're at the end of the show, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. Everybody coming
short. Let's talk for 3 hours.
Yeah, everybody came into this season like, oh man, we're just going to see goats versus goats because they've been watching Contenders, right? And that's what everybody in Contenders has been playing basically.
I was worried about it.
But we've seen every hero get playtime, including Symmetra, who Surefour ran on Kings Row for the Los Angeles Gladiators. And so we're seeing some diverse play. We're seeing a lot of like triple DPS. We're seeing a lot of like goats minus Devo with Sombra in the mix, which is actually, in my opinion, I think is going to become the meta for Stage 1, is a lot of like Sombra goats, quote unquote. So really diverse gameplay. And but I was reminded to bring up Overwatch because you mentioned having to explain your Instagram handle. So I work from home today, which means I just slum it because I didn't have any meetings or anything except for my little 15-minute department meeting where we like check in on tasks and all that. So I hop into the meeting. There's a couple other people, and one of the girls I work with was like, "Luke, I really like your hat," and I was like, "Thank you," knowing that the question was coming, and I just hoped we were going to move on. And she was like, "I can't tell what it is though. What's on your hat?" And for audio listeners, I'm wearing a Houston Outlaws hat. I was like, "Oh, it's a Houston Outlaws hat," thinking that would suffice. And she was like, "Oh, is that a hockey team?" And I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, "No, it's a professional video game team." And she was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, I can't tell if I was pleased with that we just got to move on, or if I wish I could have explained a little better that it's like a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so look, I don't care. I love the Overwatch League. I had a really great time watching it this weekend. A couple things I observed, right? I already talked about the meta. Second thing, way too many games. It's way too long. And that's not for my sake. Look, we could have matches going 24/7. I'd be thrilled. But for the talent, like the whole point of the way they've made the schedule this year, right? Teams only play 7 games a stage. They can have anywhere between 0 and 2 games a week. The reason they assembled the schedule the way that they did was to say was because they wanted to avoid player burnout. Well, they've swung the pendulum this time to where there's going to be production burnout from this staff. Like, we have to remember, this is the company that just laid off 800 people. There's no B team for their production. So, like, their observer team, they pulled 4 12-hour days in a row. And they're going to have to do that every week, except for the couple weeks between stages. But from now through the end of July, that's their life.
And those 4 days are weekend days, which that's even more sucky.
Yeah. Well, and like the talent, you can already hear that, Hexagram's one of the commentators mentioned a couple times that it was late and he was tired. Last night on Watchpoint, after all 36 hours, Monty and Doa, 2 other commentators, were talking about being delirious. There were people in the stands chanting "No Map 5" during the Dallas versus Seoul game because they were just ready to go home. Like, it's it's a lot of Overwatch, and it's breakneck speed this year too. Like there's 4 games a night as opposed to 3 last year. It's a hell of a lot of Overwatch, and I think that they're going to have to figure out something pretty quickly, or else they're going to start losing some people on the production team, which is really a shame. But Houston started off 0-2 this year. It's another big story for me. I'm working on a piece over on playerversusall.com, which is now just an Overwatch news site if you want to go check it out.
And if you want to add that to your RSS feed, you go to playerversusall.com/feed.
Yes.
You don't go there. You put that in your reader.
Which is also what I like to do when I play Overwatch. Feed, if you need help remembering it. Houston's bad, man. They're bad. And not
I'm sorry.
their players are not bad. Their coaching staff is bad. So they played Boston, second game. Boston just lost to the NYXL on Thursday in a very close match, but they were completely unable to handle the Meko Sombra in the back line.
Just whatever game I caught with him, like I guess it was
Dorado.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He tore them up on Dorado. They just couldn't deal.
Yeah. So seeing that the Outlaws have probably the best Sombra in the league in Dante, a guy they went out and signed in the offseason, the only player they went out and signed in the offseason, and yet they only allowed him to run Sombra on one map. They dominated on that map. But every time they tried to go toe-to-toe with Boston's Goats, they got just completely annihilated. And I'm working on a big write-up over on playerversusall.com you'll be able to check out later this week. But I'm not pleased with the coaching for the Houston Outlaws that we saw. And 0-2 is a really bad start. I think I'm just a free agent when it comes to the Overwatch League, though. Like, I just love all the teams. I keep scrolling through trying to pick like my second favorite team or whatever, whoever I'm going to buy the next piece of merch for, and I'm just like, love all these teams. They're great.
How did Shanghai's first match go?
They lost, and they lost their second match. So they're 0-42. But Shanghai is going to be good this year.
Okay.
They got some stuff to figure out, and I think the further away from GOATs we move, the better they're going to be. DM is awesome. He's going to be fantastic with it. They just got Gamsu from Boston, who main tank, once he gets settled in, is going to be great. They played a lot of wrecking ball, a lot of triple DPS. They're not a good GOATs team at all. They got mowed over by Vancouver in that regard. But they'll be okay. They're going to pick up their first win in this stage, I would say.
Okay. Hot
take, though. London won't win a match. They will win one match this stage. They'll beat the Justice. All right. they'll beat the Justice. They're a terrible GOATs team. So, all right. That's enough Overwatch League. Larry, you gotta come over and watch it with me sometime.
Definitely.
But I'm Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter over at TK from Antioch. No, not at TK from Antioch. I'm at Hoagie_OW. I'll be tweeting about the Overwatch League and just continuing to lose followers. I lost like 5 followers this week just from people who were like, what the fuck is Al 2019 and why has he tweeted about it 45 times in the last hour? So,
when did he get so into keeping owls?
And also, I've decided one match a week I'm going to live blog over on playerversusall.com. Tried to do all day yesterday. That ain't happening. It's impossible. So I'm going to choose like the match of the week, and that's what I'm going to live blog each week. So come over and join us for that. Follow me on Twitter to figure out which match that's going to be. But this is PVA Radio every week over here, 9 o'clock on Twitch.tv, on Mondays on Twitch.tv/PVA Radio. You can find us on podcast services and YouTube everywhere. Just search PVA Radio. Until next week, though, guys, we love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity is